Sinner, you better get ready. Hallelujah. You're listening to America's bluesiest podcast, The Pod People. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I'm luxuriating under the umbrella of Christ.
Da Xiao Hao, Wo Shi Ben Sheets, Jin Tian, Wo Gao Xing, Bao Dao Xin Jian Jing, Jie Ren.
Oh yeah! I don't know what you said, but I bet it was dope. Hi, I'm your average rambling white boy, Cleveland Mosher. How's it going?
Well, this is officially, as Ben has introduced, we are now a Chinese podcast. Pod People welcoming the Age of the Dragon, the Chinese century. We are expanding our reach to the People's Republic of China. And what better film to start that with than Ryan Coogler's Sinners? The brand new film from acclaimed. Yeah, I guess he's acclaimed director.
I mean, honestly, Ryan Coogler is probably the most commercially successful black filmmaker of all time
All
in
time,
terms of
probably.
box office numbers.
I should think. I
Yeah,
think
you're probably right.
Like Spike Lee has had some pretty big films, but
Yeah, but Spike Lee hasn't
right.
directed. Spike Lee hasn't directed two Marvel movies, Cleveland.
Two big Marvel movies.
Two big Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler did direct the second Black Panther, right? I'm not making that up.
Yeah,
I didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah, and he directed
I probably
one of the Creeds. I don't think he did all
First
three,
one.
just the first one.
The
he
first
didn't do two?
No. I don't think so.
One's amazing.
So yeah, Ryan Coogler, obviously, he kind of burst onto the scene back in like 2014, 2013, with Fruitvale Station, which was a big Sundance darling that year. Went on to direct the first Creed, and then got scooped up by the Marvel machine and did both Black Panther movies, which were I don't know about the second one. That's definitely sort of been in the sort of downturn of the MCU when people have stopped giving as much of a shit. But I know that like the first one was like one of the biggest, most successful releases of a film in the MCU.
Yeah, and I remember when it first came out, like, it was a cultural moment. Like,
It
I'm not
was.
crazy about that movie, but people talked about it, like, that whole summer.
I rewatched
Yeah.
it last week, and I know I did this last week too, but I still do kind of like turn my nose up at like that final like all CG fight at the end, but
Ugly,
it,
yeah.
it does not look good and it has not aged. I would say it hasn't aged well, but I don't think it looked good when it came out. But apart from that, like I will say, like that film, at least it has like some legitimate like culture and costuming and consideration and actual writing. Like again, like I think the Killmonger character is probably one of the better written of any of those, which I know isn't like a huge statement to make. It's usually Purple Kill Man or whatever. But
Yeah,
like that film is considered.
I don't want to discount the fact either that like speaking as three white dudes, like regardless of what I think about like Black Panther as a movie, which I think all things considered it's one of the better ones of those movies, but like a big reason that it was such a cultural moment is because it was like one of the at least in terms of like the MCU era, the first instance of like a black superhero in like a leading role, like being the main character and like being
And
like
black villain, like full, like almost
right.
entirely black cast, except for you got to chuck in Bilbo for like the elderly
For
libs to show up.
and
Like
Andy Serkis, don't
Andy
forget
Serkis.
about him.
Yeah, I forgot
You
about
gotta
him.
you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta chuck in your token white boys for representation.
Yeah.
But so it's like it's that was a big reason that it's culturally significant. But anyway, Ryan Coogler has at last been freed from the Marvel mines.
Oh, yeah.
And with the goodwill that he has earned from two very successful successful big budget Marvel films. He is in his blank check era, where he's given a lot of money to make whatever the fuck he wants. And that brings us to Sinners, which is a film that, though it wears its influences on its sleeve, and I would say is indebted to certain cliches, it is at least an original script that is not tied to IP, that is not an adaptation of something, that is not a remake of something. It is, for all intents and purposes, an original film, and an ambitious one that takes a lot of swings. So
Yes, I mean, it's obviously like a movie that Ryan Coogler was very passionate about. It's
mhm.
very much overflowing with ideas and imagery. I guess before we jump in it too far, I'd love to do a temperature check on this movie because I think I know what both of y'all feel, but
Yeah.
I would love to go around and get your initial impressions.
Can I go first? I'm gonna say I should
Best you
should go
should.
first. Yeah,
Best you
I
should.
probably for the best. I should. First off, I as I've said several times in this podcast, I am a sucker for all of the trappings of this movie. I'm very far from unbiased on this one. Like, it is a period piece with vampires, and it's set in the South. Man, I'm there. I'm so fucking there. I'm ready to roll. I was excited going into this movie, and coming out of this movie, best believe my expectations were beyond met. Because my expectations were cool vampires and costumes, and boy did I get that. So I'm very happy. But I welcome critique of this movie. Like, I'm not gonna be like a dweeb about that. But for me, it delivered everything I could have asked for it to. I did see it earlier today, and I tend to get very swept up in the glory of cinema, and I get very excited about these sorts of things, and I am definitely coming out of it with those feelings. But I don't know, tune in a few episodes from now or a year from now and see if I still am like this hot about this movie. But I'm coming out of it pretty hot. I had a great fucking time.
Okay, so on my end of things, I will say that if we're talking about met expectations, I would say my expectations for this film were met. The caveat there is I went in with pretty tempered expectations. I know, Ben and I had we saw it yesterday, so we've had a little bit of chance to talk about it. So Ben, I did say I knew Cleveland would love this movie. I called
Yeah,
that.
totally right.
Um, I am going to be the poo-pooer on this episode, I think. But what I will say, I want to do sort of a broad strokes, do a little bit of apologia for myself. I do not dislike this movie, and though I have a number of critiques of the film, I don't think a lot of the things that they're going for worked, for me at least. I want to start off by saying I am very glad this movie exists, and I want directors, especially well established, successful directors, I want them to continue making ambitious swings. Big budget, ambitious swings, original concepts, and fucking go for broke and try a bunch of weird decisions. Even if they don't necessarily work, I want more cinema like this in an age that is so homogenized with a bunch of formulaic bullshit. I appreciate a lot about this movie. I don't like it all that much. I like a lot of things about it, but I think script wise it's extremely messy, and I think that thematically it's a little bit confused. But we'll get into that as we get more into the nitty gritty.
So TLDR, go see the movie. Like,
Yeah.
go fucking
Yeah, go
support this
support this
film.
movie.
Like, I think it's really important that more movies are made like this still and really just
Yeah.
continue to be. Because I do see this film as like, existing in a long legacy of like legitimate auteur directors. And yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this film seals the deal for me. Like, I see Ryan Coogler as that. For all the good.
I feel like I'm a bit in between both of y'all because I really enjoyed it, but I do think because there's so much passion involved and there's so many ideas in the movie, it's a little underbaked at times in terms of, like, fleshing out some of those ideas just because they throw so many at you.
Yeah, this is going to be a case for me where I think I'm going to be a little bit more critical of it because of the potential and the ambition, as I tend to be. Like, when things almost meet the mark for me, but not quite, I tend to like nitpick more, I guess, and be more like sort of focused on the failings. And, considering, I'm the sort of odd man out here, I think it'll be fine to let you guys like praise it for what you love, and I'll be the stinker where I need to be.
Oh my gosh.
But
Oh my gosh, a lot.
no, I like a lot of the swings that this movie takes, and I think that it's cool that Ryan Coogler is able to take the goodwill that he has in the industry to go out and do something like this with a big budget. I guess we should give a little bit of a plot synopsis to so we can sort of like start digging in. Movie, as you mentioned, Clave, it's a period piece set in the Mississippi Delta, the Deep South, in 1932, and sort of follows twin brothers, both played by Michael B. Jordan, the Smokestack twins, Smoke and Stack, who come back to Mississippi after being off in Chicago, working, as we learn later in the film, for Al Capone. They're gangsters coming back to Mississippi, trying to sort of set up their own juke joint, an illegal bar. This is set during Prohibition, obviously, an illegal bar and gambling den for the community. Bootlegging, dealing cards, so on and so forth. And then some vampires show up on their opening night and fucking ruin every ding dang thing. For the folks you might be watching our video, Cleveland's background is From Dusk Till Dawn. That is a film that is obviously pretty heavily inspires this movie.
Oh yeah. And then Ben's background is Near Dark, which I also think heavily inspires this movie. I went into this film expecting Near Dark and was equally pleased to get From Dusk Till Dawn.
I would say honestly, at the end of the day, it's more
Wait.
From Dusk Till Dawn than it is Near Dark.
It-
Outside of sort of the setting, I think its approach to vampires, like I think that structurally it's much more From Dusk Till Dawn, a siege film.
if I was concerned with the runtime of this film, which y'all might well be. I'm not. It has a lot of false endings, but like if I was concerned with the runtime of this film, I would say this movie is from morning till evening till dawn till dusk, or dusk till dawn, or whatever. Like it's like this film captures the full day.
It confidently takes its time, and,
Yeah,
like, I
takes
would
its
even
time.
argue that the movie in a way is split in 2 halves, and the first
Mhm.
half with
Much like
all of the
From Dusk Till Dawn.
setup is, like, purely a drama,
Mhm.
and the second half is where it becomes a sort of siege vampire movie, and I think that works.
Well, okay, I was gonna say I totally agree with you until your last statement there that it works, because I think that the movie actually kind of struggles to marry those two things. And the primary reason I feel that way is because all of the setup, the first half of the movie, I really liked. I was really, really on board with most of it. Like, I had some issues here and there, but like largely, I really liked the way that this movie was setting things up. And
Yeah.
then the vampires show up, and it becomes a siege film, and it started losing me. And I would say that by the very end, and we'll definitely get into the very end, but like I don't know, I was pretty sour on this shit by the time credits were rolling. So I do think it struggles to juggle those things a little bit, but I think that's also not necessarily from a structure, like I don't think the issues arise from a structural perspective necessarily. I think that it's thematically kind of muddled, and some of what it feels like it's trying to say gets lost in the second half in a way that I don't totally love. But we can unpack that more later.
Footnote on that. I'm curious to hear more down the road. what I loved about the first half of the film is that it's structured like a almost like a heist film or a I would say like you know what it reminded me of is what's the Robert Redford Paul Newman film where they're pulling off like the big grift what's
The Sting?
the Sting,
The
yeah.
Sting, yes,
It,
thank
it
you. I was gonna say
reminds
The
the Sting does
Gambler.
the same
That's not
thing,
right.
and it very much reminded me of that in terms of pacing, and I love that. Like the premise at the top is quite simple. These two brothers have returned from the big city, and they want to start their own gin joint back home because the devil, is more important. And so they spend the first half of the film collecting all of the people that they need for their gin joint. And in so establishing the characters through not only narrative texture, but world texture. And I loved this stuff too. I really drank it up. Like all the little deal makings and like little like aspects of trade. Like it all like just gave it like such realness to me. And I had such a great time just getting lost in that world.
I liked all of this as well.
It's a real getting the band back together sort of thing, which
Yeah.
is perfect for, kind of the music-centric angle of the film, right?
Yeah,
I
no, and I think your assessment of it being sort of like a heist movie is correct. It's putting together the crew. It's
mhm.
these characters going to all of these people that they know who they haven't seen in years and being like, "Oh, you son of a bitch, we're getting the crew back together." And
Yeah.
it definitely has that energy in sort of like a deep South like Mississippi period piece kind of way. But I liked this aspect a lot too, and I think this is a good segue into part of the reason I liked it a lot is because through necessity, this is when the film separates the brothers. I think it's to its benefit.
Yes.
Because so one of the big things is Ryan Coogler working with his cinematic muse once again, Michael B. Jordan, and hey, they're a great pairing. I'd love it.
Michael
But
B. Jordan, as far as I'm concerned, legitimary actor as much as Coogler is a
he's
legendary
great.
director.
He's
Like,
great.
yeah.
I love Michael B. Jordan. But so he's playing the dual lead role. These two twins, Smoke and Stack, the Smokestack twins, and the way that the trailer, the preview sort of led me into believing is like, okay, they're twins, but they have different personalities, and like they're denoted visually by they literally just have them wearing different colored shirts and hats. Smoke is wearing a blue shirt and a blue hat, and Stack is wearing a red shirt and a red hat. And I think that one of my problems with the film is that no shade on Michael B. Jordan's performance or anything. I think he's good, aside from the accent. We can circle back to that. But I don't think that the characters differ as much as I was led to believe from the trailer. I think that especially in the second half of the movie, once they're like back together and they're all in the same location, they really do just kind of blend together for me outside of like who they're interacting with. Like they each have their love interests and so on. But where it got to the point where I kind of needed the color coding of their shirts to be able to tell them apart in a way that I don't like. My gold standard for like single actor playing twin brothers is obviously Jeremy Irons in Dead Ringers. See our episode on that. That he does. We talked about how he does such an incredible job of making the characters feel so distinct that you kind of forget that it's a single actor playing both of them. And I just don't think that the script offers enough distinction between these characters. So in the first half of the movie, when they're separated, I think that's where we get the most because we sort of see how they each approach these different situations to like get the things and the people that they need for their juke joint. Where it's like Smoke, the blue brother, is like kind of more serious, and because of that, like more violent. Like there's a scene where he goes to get the stuff from the general store, and he has like a girl like watching his truck, and two people start trying to steal from him. He just comes out and like shoots one dude in the ass. He's much more trigger happy. And then it's like you see Stack, and
He's
he's
direct.
like,
He's deliberate. Yeah.
right, yeah. Smoke is direct. He's kind of humorless. He's very serious. Like he's all business. Whereas Stack is kind of presented as the more like happy-go-lucky kind of like loose, fly by the seat of your pants kind of character. That he goes to get the old piano player, the old blues guy, to play. So he kind of has to go like sweet talk the dude. So he's using his charisma, whereas like his brother is using his muscle or whatever. And all of that stuff I thought was really good. Again, in the second half when they come together, I think they kind of just become the same character to a lot of degrees. Like I don't feel like they did a really good job of keeping them feeling distinct. Again, Michael B. Jordan plays both characters more than competently, but it's not like a Jeremy Irons type performance to me because I don't feel like he's really playing two separate characters.
Yeah, well, the Jeremy Irons comparison is really interesting. Because like in Dead Ringers, Jeremy Irons has a lot more like singular time. Like the film is an explicit focus on the two of them. Whereas
Sure.
here, Smoke and Stack are they're the heroes of the story, but like they're the legends in the story, right? Like they're these big, larger than life figures. But like the moral center of the film is Sammy.
Sammy.
Right.
And so like they don't have as like they're just not given as much focus and time to do that, like as to bring out those little subtleties beyond their action. And like while I see where you're coming from in terms of the subtlety, but like I think also the tone of this film is so different, like in what it's shooting for, like that there isn't as much room or pace for subtlety. But like in the latter half when they're running the gin joint and everything is going, or the juke joint and everything is like going well at first, like there's still some interplay there. Like Stack is still being very deliberate, like there's the violence sequence with the cards, and then like or sorry, Smoke is being more deliberate, and then Stack is sort of playing the scene a little bit more. So like it still plays out in their action, but yeah, at the end of the day with them, like it's less about like, wow, they're identical twins, but they couldn't be more different. And I think in this circumstance it's a little bit the opposite. They start very different, but by the end the result is, wow, they really couldn't be more the same. Even as like one, I guess spoilers, like becomes a vampire, like their interplay is
I don't
still
think
like,
that's really a spoiler.
yeah, somewhat similar. Yeah, I don't think so either. But I think that there is like still some like some subtlety between the two of them.
Yeah, and
But
you have to consider, even having Michael B. Jordan in this dual role as identical twins is a very considered choice. That, you have to look back and think about like why thematically that's important. And I think for me, I view it as really they're two sides of the same coin.
yeah,
Like you do see flourishes that make them both unique, but really they're kind of a composite character in a way. And I think that's very intentional. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to the extent that like I think that you have to at least for me, the way I'm looking at it is like, yeah, it's a considered decision to have a single actor playing two roles, right? And like again, to bring back the Dead Ringers comparison, that is a story where I feel like the characters really are two sides of the same coin, where they are entirely dependent upon each other, but that they are different enough that one's failings are compensated for by the other and vice versa. That in order to be that the two of them are a whole person, but separately they're sort of a half person, right? Like that's sort of the theme of the whole movie. And I think that when you're making a decision to cast an actor in a dual role, you have to have something like that in mind. Where by the end of this movie, despite the fact that again Michael B. Jordan's performance is competent and he's good in this, I was kind of questioning, why do they have to be twins? Why do they both have to be Michael B. Jordan? I don't think anything is lost lost by having it be two actors playing brothers. There's nothing about it that made me think it's like, oh yeah, this has to be the same actor playing two roles. It feels more just kind of like a show-offy thing, just for the sake of it. I struggle with the motivation a little bit, but also like I see where I do see where you guys are coming from.
I do think there's more thematic purpose than meets the eye there. Like, I think in Smoke, seeing his brother turn into a vampire, he's forced to kind of lose part of himself in that,
Sure.
just by the mirroring of it. And, if we consider the vampire stuff as kind of thematic metaphor, it could be kind of white assimilation and kind of losing part of your blackness and black identity to kind of this white culture and kind of grappling with that, right? Like,
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you. I just think that if they wanted to really make it more effective, do more with it, make Stack become a vampire sooner, because it's like that is something that's like a third act kind of deal. And I don't feel like they do a whole lot with it, to the extent that I was kind of surprised, because it's like the marketing of this movie, like the first poster is like the two of them, one blue, one red, and Stack, the red one, is kind of like smiling evilly. So it's like you see this and you're like, okay, twins, it's a vampire story. Obviously, one of them becomes a vampire. It's like that's just kind of the premise. But it's like in the actual structure of the story, they have that happen so late, and then once Stack actually becomes a vampire, like they do have like kind of a confrontation there at the end, but like at that point I didn't feel like I want to feel what Smoke is feeling, like the pain of like losing his brother to this outside supernatural force, like what that feels like for him. And I think that I was expecting it to happen so much earlier in the film. I was expecting it to be sort of like the emotional like drive of the film is how close they are, and then having to like, oh my god, my brother's become a monster, he's become something other, I've lost him, but like, do I have what it takes to actually kill him or whatever? And it's just like that. I think that what you're describing thematically, like you're right, and I think that it's a good idea. I just don't think it's fully developed.
I certainly agree with wanting more, and I get where you're coming from with the trailer too. I was sort of under the impression that like Stack would be. I didn't realize this film was going to be like a one bad night. That this was going to be a one bad night film,
No, me
and
either.
that it was going to be more about like Stack being a vampire and the two brothers playing off of each other. I think there was just like some dialogue in the trailer that did have me thinking that like it was going to be a longer thing, and for a longer period of time, Smoke was actually like possibly cool with that, and like they were using their powers in a way or something. I don't know. I got it wrong. Whatever. That's fine. But what I will say is I think that there is enough for it to work for me in the film, in that like they do operate on the rule of threes. Like after Stack is made a vampire, he and Smoke have about 3 interactions, or really closer to 4. Like there's him on the other side of the door initially. There's him trying to come back
Good
in.
scene.
There is the fight scene with the two of them, where they run away, and then he runs back outside, and then there's the final confrontation at the end. That's still a decent amount of that's still a pretty good amount of material between all of those sequences. But I do agree that I think that there is like more story to tell with that interplay, but I'm also okay with that story not being in the film.
Yeah, but all of that stuff is action driven. It's not character driven. And I think if you're trying to say something about characters, like, I mean, I like the scene that where he first becomes a vampire and they're on the other side of the door from each other. Like, I think that's cool. But like outside of that, it just it feels sort of like Stack becomes just a part of the swarm. He just like becomes one of the vampires. And I mean, I guess there's thematic relevance to, being sort of subsumed by a collective and losing a sense of individuality,
Culture.
which, footnote on that.
Yeah.
But even so, it's like, yeah, I don't know, like it didn't feel wholly earned for me. And again, it's like, if this movie had like less potential, then I wouldn't care as much. But the fact that it's like there's so many good seeds here that I just would like to see better developed. I think that's also kind of a problem with like how much the movie's trying to juggle, because like the brother dynamic and one becoming a vampire is just like one of like a handful of like thematic through lines that the movie is trying to handle. And I think it gets a little messy there.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of rare to say, but I think this movie could have even benefited from another hour of, further fleshing that out.
If you're trying to develop all these through lines, then yeah, absolutely, it needs another hour. I don't
Maybe
know if I
half
want to
hour,
watch.
yeah.
I don't know if I want to watch another hour of this movie, but I think if you're trying to fully develop all these things, then
There
yeah,
were
you need at
certainly
least.
other threads that I felt like could have been pulled on a little bit more too, though. Like,
Mhm.
I think the Native Americans that were originally hunting down our first vampire were super interesting, and I would have loved to get more from them.
They were extremely cool. I also really love that they cast this excellent shadow and then just disappear out of the film. Like that, like it to me that did an amazing job of implying like this wider, greater world. I thought they were so fucking cool, dude. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, just to kind of wrap up that point for me. Another thing I really like about like the twins and the fact that like they are both like acting as Michael B. Jordan, is that it allows for such cool interplay in the first act, cutting back and forth between sequences on either side of town between these two brothers. And so Michael B. Jordan is in both of these scenes, like as things are playing out, and it allows for like the goals and objectives to all feel so centered. And like even though like it's kind of like touching on what Ben was talking about a minute ago, like they're doing different things, they're acting differently as each other, like, and they're across town, they're still acting as one and pushing towards this one goal. And we're able to get like all this more exposition with essentially fewer characters, like because of that, right? Like we're able to have our central figure be on either side of the map. And it worked quite well for me.
Yeah, well,
Especially when you're also working in like the protege figure, like the young squire, like, and he's looking up to these guys. Like it works well for it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think where the part of the reason that it sort of fails for me in the third act is because once Stack becomes a vampire, you lose his perspective. I think that that would have been a great opportunity to sort of go back to the formula of the first act of the movie, where they're separated and we're cutting back and forth between them and seeing how they handle things differently. Give me that once Stack becomes a vampire. Like, we see him participating in the big river dance sequence, but like other than that, like he has just entirely become the other. So I think that there's a sort of missed opportunity there to bring it back around cyclically. Like the movie starts with the brothers going their separate ways to accomplish shared goals. They come back together, and then through acts outside of their control, they are separated again, this time for good. So let's see what that means for each of them. Let's see how their goals have changed now that they're separated, now that one of them is the undead. Like, let's see that. And I mean, we don't.
And I think there's a reason for that, but we can cycle back to it because it involves the other characters. Let's backtrack a little bit, and I want to talk about, if it's cool, I just want to talk about like the genre influences on this film.
Sure.
And then we can kind of cycle back around to the characters again. But what I love about this film is that it has such a great understanding of its source materials. Like, this movie is not just referencing Near Dark. It's not just referencing or pulling from Dusk Till Dawn. It understands the movies that those films are also referencing. Like this film, like, it looks like a fucking Ford movie. Like it feels like a proper Western as well. It doesn't like just let the costuming be enough for period. Like, they did so much with the cinematography. I was actually learning in a podcast that the primary camera operator Apparently she's like one of the first women to like use like an IMAX camera in a film or something. I don't know. They were talking about it on the podcast. It was really neat. But I forget, it's like her middle name is like a reference to like Ford movies because like her dad was like such a big Western guy. Like, so there's like this like kind of cool like sense of legacy like in like the making of the film, and like these people really understood like going all the way back through the language of
Is her
like
middle name
American cinema.
Sierra after the Sierra Madre?
Well, it's clear Coogler has a big love of John Carpenter, right?
Oh,
You see obvious inspiration from something like Assault on Precinct 13 with the
mm.
siege stuff, but you also see it in like influences from The Thing when they're going around eating the garlic. Like that's a direct
Oh,
pull from
yeah.
like the
I was
blood
thinking that
testing
too.
scene.
And it's great. It's a
Like
wonderful
that.
play on that sequence. And I think that sequence works too to kind of give it away is that none of them are the vampire. Like, and I thought that was a really fun twist.
Yeah, they find a dude who they think is dead, like lying in a pool of blood. So they're like, "Oh, somebody inside must be a vampire." They all eat the garlic. Nobody's a vampire, and then it turns out that the dude had just like passed out in like a puddle of wine or whatever, and they
Yeah.
threw his body outside with the vampires, and then he wakes up and he's like, "Hey, let me back in," and he
That
gets
sequence
fucking. It's
very
very
messy.
good.
I think the most awkward cut is during that moment too, because like some very important dialogue is happening between characters, and we're just suddenly pulled away from just this guy that I didn't really recognize from before, just like on the ground with like a pile of blood around him, and we're like, "What happened? What's this?" And like I was like, "Wouldn't there be people in the room? Like, what's going on?" And like it all kind of carries out, and I thought I personally think that like it sort of intentionally like kind of cut in suddenly, and it's very messy, like to kind of show like how things are falling apart and like the messiness of the moment. And I think it works for that. But in the moment, like when the first scene, I was like, what? Like what the fuck are they doing? Like that's so out of the blue.
I liked that scene. I will say, yeah, I
Yeah.
like the John Carpenter.
I love how the drunk, is barely keeping the garlic down, and it makes it feel like he is the
Yeah, man.
vampire, but really it's a great example of like this movie's like wry sense of humor that he's just kind of drunk and
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
barely keep it
And
down
before
because
that
well,
it's
too,
strong.
I love how like Jamie Lawson's character like it doesn't want to do it because like it just out of like sheer
she doesn't
obstinance.
like the taste. She didn't like the
Yeah, and
taste of
like
garlic.
her personality like comes forward so strongly in that, and like it makes sense to like how her character's been established too. Like it works great.
Yeah, ooh, she's the vampire because she's refusing to eat the garlic because she says she doesn't like the taste. It's like, well, that's a flimsy fucking excuse. But then when she finally does like eat one, it's like, yeah, she's not a vampire. She just really hates the taste of garlic.
I love that she complains it's not one of the pickled ones. That's great. Like that's really cute texture. Like referenced it earlier.
Isn't that a different character who says that it's not one of the pickled ones? Because I think
Possibly
that
could be the heat of the moment that I
Yeah,
missed
because
it.
I think that character she doesn't like garlic at all. So I think the other
Mm,
character is like, yeah, we could have at least gotten one of the pickled ones or whatever. But
it's cute.
yeah, that's a fun moment.
Going back to the first half a little bit, one thing I wanted to talk about is because the movie is so structurally focused on like the single day, essentially, a lot of the texture of kind of the larger world and the backstory of characters are kind of told directly to us, right? Like through
Yeah.
exposition and like characters' dialogue. And I think they do a pretty good job with that overall. I think one of the most interesting elements is why the Smokestack twins came back to Mississippi from Chicago, because throughout the course of the movie, we get a lot of different motivations pulling them back. I mean, the most clear one is the racism versus, the racism you don't know.
Right.
But it also seems like, it's revealed that they have a bunch of Irish beer and Italian wine that presumably they stole from the mob and are trying to fence it and get rid of it so they don't get caught with it.
They're pitting the gangs against each other. They stole
Mhm.
a bunch of beer from the Irish in Chicago, and then they stole a bunch of wine from the Italians. And so they're thinking, oh well, they'll think each other did it, so they won't bother us.
Yeah. It's really nice flavor for the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like, structurally, being a single night is a very bold choice, and I like it. I kinda woulda loved to see that stuff. Maybe we'll get it in a sequel or
Yeah.
something, I'm
I
sure, but
I think that, like, as far as exposition goes, most of this is handled pretty naturally for the amount of exposition that it has to
Mhm.
deliver, all things considered. I never felt like the film was, like, dumping on me necessarily. I will say the film does something that I don't love in that it doesn't trust its audience to remember things that have happened in the film before, and so anytime that it references or sort of resolves any of those things, it has to provide like voiceover narration from a previous line or cut back to a scene so we'll remember that they said this thing to us earlier in the movie. That annoys me a little bit.
I think there's sometimes that it works and sometimes it kind of falls flat a little bit. Like, I think the Chinese grocery store owners or the shop owners that are there and, at a certain point the vampires threaten their daughter and we get like a quick cut to their daughter. That feels natural because it's like their subjective view of like their
Right.
memory. But other times, yeah, it's more direct.
That's fine. It's like like when, and we're jumping all over the place and we're fully in spoilers or whatever, but when Smoke's love interest, who's like the woman who's like, practicing like old hoodoo and stuff, she's from Louisiana, so on and so forth. And they, set up early on that they were together and they had a baby, and then the baby died from, something or other. And later on when she gets bit by the vampire and Smoke has to kill her or whatever, she's like, I got somebody on the other side who's waiting for me, and you do too. And it's like that line itself should be enough, but instead they have to flash back to Smoke like kneeling over the baby's grave to like make sure you don't forget who they're talking about. It's like that kind of stuff is
That's another example of I don't mind it that much,
Me
again, though,
too.
because it's just as subjective, right? Like, we're seeing,
yeah.
you know,
That's what he's saying.
emphasized his memory of that,
Mhm.
of
I
his
don't know if,
loss, which is
yeah.
top of mind for him.
Sure, but
I
but as an attentive viewer, we should know that. We shouldn't need to see it. Like we know that they had a baby who died. Like it's a big part of like the importance of their relationship and their characters. Like you shouldn't have to flash back to something that I already saw in the movie before. Like I know that the baby died. I know that he's thinking about the baby. I know who she's talking about when she says that we have somebody waiting for us on the other side. It's like I don't know. I think that feels like one of those things where that Ryan Coogler is like from working in Marvel stuff that like you really have to spell shit out for your audience because it's like lowest common denominator type shit.
I think he's going for that. Like I think he's pushing for accessibility in the film. Like I do get what you're coming from. Like it isn't like the most trust given to your viewer, but like for me, I when there is being like mad ADD and there's like so much going on in this movie, having like a visual reference is kind of welcome. Like if I'm being honest, but I
Yeah,
I
I
I, I
mean,
do I do think
I
that's
think that's
fair. Like
fair. There's a
yeah,
lot of characters and, there's a lot of threads that are being pulled on throughout the
Yeah.
movie.
busy
And,
film.
yeah, juggling all of that is a feat in and of itself. Like, I think one of the strongest things about the first half of the movie is you introduce so many characters, and the movie does take its time kinda setting everyone up. But it pays off by the second half because you really kind of feel for the tribulations that they all go
Well,
through.
to the movie's credit, and again to the first half's credit, it does a good job of setting up all of these characters.
Oh yeah.
With a cast this large that has so much focus put onto all of these different characters, the fact that I wasn't in the third act going, now who is that? Who? Like the fact that I actually knew who all of these people are is like credit to the movie. I know that feels like lowest common denominator, but like a lot of
Harder
movies
to do
don't
than
do that.
yeah.
A lot of like big ensemble cast films like do not do that well.
It's
I
a
know.
challenge to write that.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it is a feat. While we're talking about like what's her name, Wunmi Masaku, like her character as like the sort of like the shaman figure amongst them who is aware of the lore of what's going on. I want to kind of brush on her character a little bit because I really liked her presence in the film. Also,
Mhm.
I was looking through the IMDb and she voices oh shoot, what is the character's name? I've got it here. Ozzy in Scavenger's Reign. And that's why I was like trying to figure like why is her voice familiar?
Oh, the
And it's
robot.
like no, the lead character with the hover with the robot, like in the
Oh, who's
sequence.
hanging out with the robot? Okay, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Ozzy. But yeah, she's really good. But anyway, uh, I love how like she first thinks that they're haints, outside, and she's like trying to figure out what the rules are, but she's savvy, so she figures it out pretty quickly, which I appreciated. Like that she was able to get all our protagonists up to speed quick, and we had very little of the what are these vampire things? Like we skipped past like the cliches we've seen a million times. And I love too that like when she's setting it up and like she's explaining what these vampires are, like she pulls Smoke aside and is like, "Hey, look, you're gonna put this through my chest if I become one of these." And like we've seen that set up a million times, but like when that event does happen, he's pretty quick about it. Like they don't like overplay the sappiness. She gets the line in about like there's someone waiting for me on the other side, and then boom, he does it. He actually does follow
Yeah.
through, and I appreciated that like a lot. Like that they didn't like it's nice like how often and I think they made really good choices like when to play into cliches, when to do their own twist on things, and it made the film feel like a beautiful love letter and an homage and equal parts its own thing and like its own like creative work as a film. Again, in the same way that like fucking From Dusk Till Dawn is playing up every Clint Eastwood western, right? Like this movie stands on its own like beautifully for
I'm
that.
just I'm just gonna say I know these characters are all poor sharecroppers and whatnot, but it takes place in 1932, and the Bela Lugosi Dracula came out the year before that in 1931. So these characters should all know what vampires are. There should be no question. There should be like, oh yeah, I saw that fucking that movie last year with the crazy Hungarian
Well,
guy.
I mean, in fairness, like a big subplot is like a lot of the community doesn't have much money because they're
Yeah.
Yes,
paid in like
that's why I said, yeah,
plantation bucks,
they're
right?
droppers, so they're paid in company script.
Like I
Exactly.
can probably
That's why
say that like
it's not a real complaint. I'm just
right, like on the white side of their town that we don't see, like yeah, those people would probably all be familiar with Nosferatu and the rest, but like I don't. Yeah, like yeah, again, like Ben said, like there's this scene where a guy like could barely pay for like corn liquor, like he's probably like
Haley Steinfeld, Haley, what's that bitch's name?
Haley
Haley
Steinfeld, yeah.
Steinfeld. Yeah,
Haley Steinfeld.
yeah, she's white. She should have seen Dracula and should have been able to tell him. She knows. Hell,
There you go.
dude, fucking Michael B. Jordan's plural. They just came back from Chicago. They got all this money
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
that's true. There you go. They could have seen the
There should have
movie.
been a bit how when they were in Chicago they went and saw a fucking a picture with a vampire, and so
You know what's
they know.
You know what's great in horror movies? When people reference movies and they say, it's just like in this movie. Like, that's great. Yeah, no matter what time period, I want to see that in a film.
I
No,
think
speaking of
when
Haley Steinfeld, though, or after you, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think when it's a period piece and they're referencing a movie that would have been relevant in popular culture at that time, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
I think that when you're setting a film in 1932 that is a vampire movie and you have a character reference 1931's Dracula, I think that's all right. The film doesn't do that. I'm just saying.
I don't think
This
it needs it.
movie should have
So
been full of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin references.
Yes,
speaking
correct.
speaking of Haley Steinfeld, I just went to the fact like I was trying to figure out what I knew her from, and I was like, she seems familiar. And it wasn't until I got home and I IMDb'd it that I felt incredibly old. She's the girl in the True Grit film.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she's like a little
Fucking
14-year-old like kid, like who gets under the wing of Rooster Cogburn and True Grit. Like,
great movie.
God, that made me feel
She,
old.
Mhm.
Like,
she's very good in that movie too.
she's great.
She's
Yeah,
great
man.
here.
She is. She's
Um,
really like everyone in this film is just like absolutely like rocking charisma.
Yeah, good
It's
cast.
great. Like everyone is so compelling
Yeah, well,
in
and
this
her
movie.
character kinda oozes sexuality in this movie, and that's a broader point I wanted to bring up, is this movie is very sensual at times, and very sexual in a way that I feel like we don't see very often in big studio movies anymore,
Yeah,
which I
Yeah,
appreciated.
me too. Me too. Like yeah,
the
there's a
movie.
lot of like dialogue about getting railed and like fucking getting it
And
from the
eating
back,
pussy?
etc. Eating
I was gonna
pussy
say,
and like
the movie has a weird fixation on cunnilingus specifically. But yeah, I mean, I'm,
big fan.
you know me, I'm generally in favor of movies being hornier, like they used to
Yeah,
be. So
spitting into people's mouths.
Look, I mean, normally when we say like we're talking about puppetry, when we say we want movies to look more wet, but like I just that statement goes across the board as far as I'm concerned, and it is true because like Coogler does have like his style of filmmaking is very much speaks the language of modern big budget box office hits, and there's been a lot of puritanism like in that field
yeah,
lately. Like normally, like directors don't have budgets at this scale to be that horny because they have to like make all their money back and be like
I don't think budget is what's keeping movies from being horny, but
Well, I think part of it is, big tent movies have to serve as many audiences as possible,
right.
and, like, this movie is a big movie, but it feels like a movie aimed towards adults, which
yeah,
I
it's
feel like we
R-rated.
don't get for huge budget movies
Yeah,
anymore,
Yeah,
yeah.
very
it's
often.
R-rated, it's bloody, it's gory, like it's thematically adult, and our theater was full, you know?
But, like, it
Mhm.
plays into, like, what is that, like, Adorno's theory thing where, like, superhero films in particular, right, which I think is very relevant considering Coogler, like, superhero films, like, are constantly forced into, like, teasing sex and teasing sexuality, but they can never, like, fully move on it, which is, like, mad repressed, right? And they can't ever,
Mhm.
like, really fully move on sexuality and be, like, confident art because they have to appeal to broad family audiences and all the rest. And yeah, like here we still get the veneer of a film like that, but they can fucking go all the way with it. And yeah, I find that mad respectable.
Yeah,
Like he made that choice.
they can talk about eating pussy all the time.
Roll Tide.
Well,
Goddamn
that's
right.
that's one interesting thing about it because it is a very, sensual, sexual movie, like I said, and very horny. But, it is still tasteful. Like, it's they're not going over the top with it. There's not even any real nudity. I you
No,
know?
I don't think there's a single breast in this film.
Yeah.
Uh well, there's a breastfeeding.
Oh
There's a
yeah,
shot of,
okay,
here to breastfeed, but that doesn't count.
but you can't see nipple. Breastfeeding isn't sexual unless you're a fucking freak.
No.
Um,
Yeah, no. But anyway, they just I was just making a point. You said there's no okay, anyway. Let's see. Going through the cast.
well,
Um
we need to talk about the Sammy character because
yeah.
he's outside of Michael B. Jordan's twins. He's the central character. He plays their cousin. The actor is Miles Caton. This is his first movie. And good on him. He's good in this.
Oh yeah.
But he plays their younger cousin who has when they went off and he stayed behind in Mississippi. His father's a preacher and he kind of has a rift with him because he just wants to play the blues. And before they went off to Chicago, they gave him a guitar that they claim was they won off of oh, what's the
Charlie
famous
Parker?
blue Charlie Parker. Yes, thank you. I was gonna say Charlie Patton.
Editor's note: Matisse is correct, it is Charlie Patton. Charlie Parker is the famous jazz saxophonist, not Delta blues guitarist.
Um, in claim they won this off of him in a blues card game in a card game, and fuck am I talking about?
I don't know.
And yeah, so they get him to he's gonna come to their opening night and play the blues and charm everybody, and that's sort of like the movie starts with this sort of like voiceover thing talking about how, there are some people who can play music so like powerfully or whatever that it sort of like pierces the veil and can conjure spirits from the past and the future, but that the music is so powerful that it will also, lure devils. So that's kind of like the center of the whole movie, is that like the music that this young blues musician plays is sort of what lures in the vampires, but also allows the characters to stay connected to their ancestors and their heritage, so on and so forth. It's definitely kind of reminiscent of Robert Johnson, who is, sort of considered the father of the blues.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's the story of, him meeting the devil at a crossroads and making a Faustian bargain to play guitar good, because he died so young and under mysterious circumstances. Blah blah blah. And he was he was active in this same period. I think he died in like 1938 or something like
Yep.
that. So the movie is definitely sort of making parallels to that. And I think that Miles Kane is good, and he's obviously, I don't know if he learned to play guitar for the movie, but they do, it's not cinematic trickery. Like in all of these scenes, he is playing and
As far as I'm aware.
seemingly singing. It sounds like his voice, and so hey, good on him. I think the character is, he's fine. He's not the who I necessarily care the most about in the movie, but he's good.
I think
And
he goes, in my opinion, like he goes above and beyond his required role. So
hmm,
like the young squire character, like the youth who's looking up to his two cool like cousins, or they're almost like they sort of act as like like older uncle figures to him. Like that character, like often like their requirement is show up and look like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and like you don't really know what's going on, and this is a whole new mysterious world that you're being introduced to. But like he shows so much more depth than that. Like he still shows like enough experience that he can like kind of carry his way through the world, and like
yeah,
confidence that like I buy both aspects of it, that like this is new to him, but also like he's ready for it and he's earned it. And on top of that too, like the fucking talent, again, like I don't know if he is really playing in the scene, but it sure feels like he is, and he sure sells it like nobody's damn business.
Well, for a movie in a lot of ways about the blues, like, it
Yeah.
hinges on that performance, and I think he nails it there.
Yeah, and never being in a film before, like, god damn,
Yeah, it's
like, it's
crazy.
crazy.
I think beyond that, like, he in a way, like, Sammy is kind of the thematic core of the movie, right? Like, the movie
Yeah,
is called Sinners, and, as preacher boy, he is grappling throughout the movie of this idea of sin and, playing music being a sinful act, outside of the church, right?
right.
And kind of grappling with that and his own identity and kind of how that gets especially thorny once the vampires show up. Yeah, I think it's critical.
because, like, the brothers, like, represent, like, bringing money back into the community, right? Like, they went into the city, they hung out with all these, like, rich white people, and they brought this, like, influence back. And it kinda reminds me of, like, the same kinda culture that's built up around, like, Kendrick or whoever else, and, like, these, like, big rappers that make a big name, then they come back to their community, and they try and do something with that, right? Like, it's and I sort of get, like, that there are those similar themes there, where they're trying to, like, elevate these young artists and bring them through, and like and elevate the culture, give their community something more than they've had before. That's why like they get so much joy out of like sharing that Irish beer, when like there's the older blues singer Delta Slim is
Oh, I
like they
know.
introduce him with the beer, and he's like really excited about it. Like I thought that was like that was
Yeah,
really
because
good.
he's poor, so he's used to drinking corn liquor. So this Irish beer is something that he's never experienced before. But no, I think Ben, you really hit the nail on the head when you say that Sammy is the thematic core of this movie.
Mhm.
I could not agree more, because all of the major themes of the film sort of arise from and like spiral around him. So in that, like, you're talking about how, you know, the movie is called Sinners, and his father wants him to give up the blues because playing blues music for all of these, you know, people who are hedonistically partying and drinking and gambling and having sex during prohibition and all, it's like that is seen for he's catering to sinners, right? And his cousins who come back from Chicago from being gangsters, from becoming rich, working with gangsters and ultimately like exploiting and robbing from gangsters and all this, like they are, you know, they are sinners or whatever. And I think that sort of something that the film is trying to say that I don't know if it entirely succeeds at, or at least doesn't fully develop, is like this, there's this idea, at least the way I read it, you know, feel free to tell me if y'all read this differently, but I think that a lot, that especially like the vampires, a big core of this movie is the idea of like Christianity as colonialism, kind of, and that
Yeah.
it is sort of like this homogenizing force that infiltrates a culture and a community and severs that community from its cultural heritage. Because there's this whole idea of, you know, as we mentioned, that there are these musicians who can sort of through their music pierce the veil and get people in touch with the spirits of the past and the future, so their ancestors and where their community or culture will be down the road. But from like a strict, like upright Christian perspective, like Sammy's father, the blues is demonic, right? It's satanic.
I find that read interesting, especially because, you know, the black church experience being so important to Sammy, which kind of muddies it a little bit for me. I think beyond that, it's about what it means to be a sinner and what it means to sin, right? Like, I think that conversation that Sammy has with, I think it's Smoke, about kind of the town over being kind of this black run town, and the twins trying to settle there and kind
Tell
of
him
being,
go. They tell him, yeah, like go be with the real black people. You
yeah.
know, like don't
And
don't run off to Chicago. Like go be with the real black community.
yeah, well, and they were trying to go there, and the twins were pushed away because they had evil in them, right? That they thought was generational. And Sammy has to grapple with this idea of, you know, despite the Smokestack twins being, you know, portrayed as kind of evil sinners, they are bringing joy into the community. And what
Right.
does it
But that
mean, you know, to grapple with the idea of kind of bringing joy and celebration into the community despite being traditionally sinful?
Yeah, that's my point though, about like Christianity as like a colonizing force, that like through the celebration of the blues, that they're sort of allowing the community to, you know, get back in touch with their spiritual and ancestral roots. Because like I think that, I can't remember which character says it, it's one of the twins when he's talking with Sammy about how like Christianity was forced upon the African slaves who were brought to America, which it was, right? It's like that they were ripped from their culture and forced into Christianity. And we get that parallel with the main vampire guy, right? Rennick or whatever, that he is from he's originally from Ireland, from so far back that he talks about how, you know, when he's at the end when he's like holding Sammy by the neck or whatever, and Sammy starts like reciting the Lord's Prayer and Rennick starts like reciting it with him, he's like, yeah, those were the words that the English forced upon, you know, my father and our people, and talking about it as sort of like, yeah, they came and forced this homogenizing force upon us too, and eradicated our culture as well. And why do the vampires want Sammy so bad? Because his music is able to pierce that veil, right? And Rennick has been trapped on Earth, in his spirit, trapped in his undead body for so many centuries, that he has become entirely divorced from his ancestors and his culture. And he even says it, he says it explicitly, like, we want Sammy because I want to see my ancestors again.
Well, he
Like,
says he wants his stories, right?
right.
And like I can read what you're saying there, but at the same time, there's also themes of being a culture vulture, right? Like taking I mean, the blues
Appropriation,
turned
yeah.
into white rock and roll, right? Like the idea of taking a black cultural signifier and turning it assimilating it into white culture.
Yeah,
Do you mind if I jump in?
that's it exactly. That's it exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you're both right. I think you're both absolutely right here. I think that the broader allegory of the film is how music is exploited by many different aspects. I think it's talking about, it is an allegory about how Christianity can, like, capitalizes on religion, and I think it's also how white culture capitalizes on music as well. In Christianity capitalizes on music. Sorry, my bad there. And on culture, right? Like, and stealing those things. So, and it's why, like, again, to spoil the very end of the film, I really, really love that Sammy goes back to his dad, and after this whole horrible night, and his dad is like, hey, put down the guitar, put down sin, walk away from it. And he tethers the guitar to sin. And Sammy understands that he needs to walk away from that too. And that he also, like, in that moment of, like, he literally just went through his darkest night, like, understands that, like, music wasn't the problem there. It's how the music is wielded. And that, like, the vampires were partially right, because I think Coogler, like, really understands intent in his scripts. Like, and again, I hate to say this, but again, it's the same with Killmonger too. Like, in his character. Yeah, like, I think he understands character intent. And he understands, like, the like, and I think these vampires are muddy in a similar way to, like, his past, like, villainous characters, where, like, they're correct in, like, their institutional means, right? Like, the institution has driven them to that desperation, and their right to lash out against that and weaponize it is correct. Like, what's the motivation with Smoke and Stack? Like, I almost wanted to side with the vampires. Like, the vampire showed up and said, hey, the Klansmen are going to come in the morning, and we need to kill them. Join us, and you'll have the means to do that. We'll give you the weaponry to, like, to destroy these evil bastards. They're the big music studio, right? They have all the resources. They have all the power in this circumstance to, like, to take on, like, these other threats, and to bring, like, and to help their community, but at what cost, right? And so, like, yeah, the way that the vampires sort of do act is like culture vultures, and they're, like, sucking up everyone around them and stealing everyone into this, like, hive collective consciousness from their eyes as a means for good, and their justification is correct, but their means are wrong. And so, like, it all operates as this, like, really, to me, beautiful allegory about, like, the many ways in which, like, music can be weaponized and used for good, for ill, and vice versa. And, like, Christianity is one of those ways. Like, but then there's all these other aspects as well, and sort of the vampires are inherently bad. They're not good. And I love too that, like, the reason I say, like, it's not specifically Christianity is because of that aspect with the vampires. Like, what is the song that they all sing? Like, when we get the whole, oh shit, everyone's a vampire moment, like, and we cut to them, they're singing Rocky Road to Dublin, right? Which, like, I love, which also too, like, what a fucking great choice for a song, because, like, it's got, like, so many, I'm a shitty lyrics guy, but like cut a stout of blackthorn to banish ghosts and goblins, like, it's all, like, very mythical and fun and cultural and not Christian. And I really love the mythology behind that. So all that to say, I think you're both absolutely right. Like, it is an allegory for how music is weaponized, and, like, and I think more so than the rest, the film's called Sinners. It is about how Christianity does that. I think the vampires also offer additional perspective to the allegory that make it more than that. But I think Teese's point still initially stands.
Well, I mean, that's kind of my that's kind of my point. Is I think that it is a little bit messy in that with like what it's trying to say. Like, is it Christianity? Is it like music? Like it's kind of both.
All of
Like,
it, I
yeah,
think, really, like,
yeah,
again, like, this movie's overflowing with ideas, for better and for
exactly,
worse. Um,
exactly.
I do wanna go back to, Jack O'Connell's monologue, when the vampires appear and make their case for,
Yeah.
everyone joining them, because I think you're totally right, Cleve, like, Coogler is great at writing villains that have kind of motivations that feel realistic and earned, right? Like, I think it plays at a core idea of, asking these characters in the juke joint whether it would be easier for them to be a vampire or a black person in the Jim Crow South, right? Like, are you going to just have a better time just, not having to worry about being subjected to others and be part of this community? And I mean, like, that's the interesting thing about this this whole Irish vampire thing is, like, they do show them as a community and kind of joyfully sharing music together just in a similar way to the juke joint in a respect. But they have to to become a vampire, they have to sacrifice part
Right,
of themselves to it.
but it's enforced culture, right? It's like
Yeah, exactly.
you've got this one vampire, this one old Irish vampire who's turning all of these other people, and suddenly all of these folks, black, white, and otherwise, are river dancing in a circle, right? Like
Become
doing something that is doing something that is not their own culture, that is they're sort of like they're having this other culture like forced upon them, you know. It's like, and that's sort of what I'm saying about like that as the metaphor for like Christianity, because like even though yes, as an especially as an Irish vampire, as like a culture that has, you know, also been slaves and also been repressed or whatever. I'm not going to be a white slavery guy by any means, but like, you know, the Irish were slaves like hundreds of years ago, and so and they also had Christianity forced upon them against their will, you know? So it's kind of like it's like this is what you can become if you don't stay in touch with your roots, with your ancestors, whatever, is that you are just going to, it's like, yeah, come join us, everything's more equitable, everything's more good, but it's homogenized. You know, this is the type of movie that, like, when I was watching this, I was almost like, was this script written in like 1970? Like, is the Cold War still happening? Like, this feels like an anti-communist kind of screed to me a little bit.
See, to me, I read that, I get what you're saying with, assimilating into this Christian culture, but I think beyond that, it's assimilating into a white culture,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
like I
and it's
think
cool
there's
too that
so
they pick
much
an
in
Irish
there.
guy because, like, like again, like Irish, Italian, all of that, like these are all like different sects of like and creeds that were of inevitably homogenized into whiteness, but weren't always. Like it's always been like kind of like what whiteness doesn't mean anything, right? Like it is purely like a cultural like weird homogeny itself, which I really like that they pick an Irish guy, right? Because like the like Irish immigrants were treated weird in the States as well for a period of time, and like especially this period of time. And like and it further reinforces like again like class derision. That's set up like these characters are also turned away. And yeah, it works great for it. The Irish guy has as much reason to hate the Klansmen too, and I think that's cool.
Okay, so I want to talk about of a particular scene because Ben and I talked a little bit about it, and I want to get your read on it. The scene in the middle where they kind of like visualize this theme that they've been talking about, like music piercing the veil of
Yeah.
space and time and spirits and all of this stuff. And basically, you know, they do. I'll just briefly describe it and then we can discuss it. Sammy starts playing, doing this thing, and they do this sort of long, protracted at least simulated oneer. I don't know if it's actually a oneer, but they do this oneer through the whole barn and of like everybody dancing and all of these like sort of anachronisms of culture coming in. You have like West African like dancing. You've got like a guy dressed like he's from In Living Color, or from he's dressed in
like a
like
George
one of the guys
Clinton
from
kind of like
yeah, George Clinton,
Parliament.
Living Color, yeah, kind of playing the guitar. You've got like a DJ up on stage, like spinning, tracks, and they sort of blend all of these into the music, and they go throughout the barn, and all of these things are like interwoven. And because there's like the Chinese couple, they're like, we can't forget about them, so they throw in like a couple of like old like Chinese opera like style dancer kind of things. I feel like I'm gonna continue to be like the major poo-pooer here. I fucking hated this scene. I get what they were going for. I thought it was horribly executed. I came
really.
out of
Well,
yeah,
this is
Damn, I loved
definitely the
it.
most talked about scene in the movie from early stuff I've seen online so far, and I I liked it. I think it's very, purely cinematic, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's something that you couldn't really replicate in any other medium, really. I mean, I guess you could do it on the stage, but it wouldn't play the same. And I think expressing this idea in the cinematic form is super cool and unique. I would love to hear what you think, Cleve.
Yes. So, I'll kind of break down my chain of thought, like as I was experiencing the scene. I have to go a scene before. There is a moment between Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld, or sorry, Mary and Stack. My bad. Where she's having a lot of like revelations about like her situation with him and vice versa, and they're playing off of each other, and it's a very intimate personal moment. And the music, that scene begins with the actual local music occurring, and as that scene carries forward and as it becomes more personal and more intimate, and they're sort of reflecting on their past, electric guitars start coming in. And I was sitting there going like, it's really interesting that they're sort of playing that like anachronistic music, because like up till that point maybe I hadn't noticed it. I'm sure there is like more anachronistic music, but it usually felt like it was like field recordings with like modern bass, or like something like worked in.
Well, there were those doom metal cues when we first get the vampires, almost symphonic doom. But
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
almost
say,
felt like gestures to the genre, right?
right,
Like,
like, yeah, sort of countering. And but like in that scene, I kind of took a pause for a second. I was like, that's really cool how like they're sort of using like modern medium to transport us, and like kind of carry things through like their very like personal like time as they're reflecting backwards. And I'm like, and I was literally like in that moment thinking to myself, damn, isn't it cool how like music can like help like transport us through time and space and shit. And like literally the next scene is like we come out of the electric guitars, and like, and again, the already anachronistic scoring, and then we come into this scene where we talk about how music can like carry us through. And so I thought it was really well set up, like and like, and again, they do it all legitimately. It's not like there's no like crazy surreal CG sequencing going on. Like they just bring in like cool like cultural dancers and performers. And I thought the mix was like really incredible, like how they were able to like carry on that singular like track as it's like kind of remixed through time. I didn't expect it. It certainly caught me off guard. But I loved it. And I loved like how it carries out to the barn at the end, and we're seeing that this is a spiritual vision. Like that this is like, like again, it's sort of like a sensory conjuring, and no, these people aren't actually there and all the rest. Like it is like it's allegorical. Like it's representative, like how art can, like mean all these different things and be like a platform for discussion and be moldable like clay. And yeah, is it kind of corny that like to be like that anachronistic? Yeah, like yeah, it's kind of a goofy sequence. I love it. I think
it's
that's it.
definitely
But
a
I
bold
totally
move.
understand like being bounced off by it though. Like I think
It's
that is a
it's
completely fair
definitely a
critique.
bold directorial move, to do something like this and to
I'm
make
curious how
it
it
such
will
a
age.
grand move in your movie. And I gotta say, like, the final shot of that sequence where, the walls have burned away and
Yeah.
we see that wide shot
Music
of
breaks down
outside
barriers. Yeah.
of, the juke joint with all of them dancing. It made me wish I was seeing this movie in IMAX because I
Oh, me
feel
too.
like that scene especially with the full frame would have felt even more grand. I will say the one critique I have on it is the same thing that Tease mentioned, is that, like, throwing in some of the Chinese dancing felt like a weird afterthought, where it felt so centered on the Black cultural experience through time, that throwing that in felt like it muddied the idea a little bit, and
Don't
I wanna tread carefully because I don't mean that in a prejudiced way by any means,
Well,
but
I think that what they're trying to say there is that like music is a way to connect culture through time and through history. And like it and that like in this case, in this place, it is about black culture, but allegorically it doesn't have to be,
Well, I
right?
think
And so
I
like
think
here is also this.
I think the idea is that the music connects the people who are hearing it with the spirits of their culture, and not that it's projecting the spirits of the person who's playing the music. Like that's what
Right.
they're going for. My like look, I'll be blunt about it. My problem with the whole thing is it feels like the most expensive Modelo commercial that's ever been shot. Like it's it like I don't know if you guys have like seen recent Modelo commercials like on Hulu or
No.
whatever, but they always do this kind of like it's like a working class beer, but it helps like blue collar people celebrate their excellence and their spirit. That it's like Modelo is like the beer that is for fighters. It is for people who are working on the fucking line at a shitty restaurant, and that like at the end of your damn 12-hour shift where you're making $8 an hour, that you get to crack open a Modelo and that you can celebrate that with your fucking coworkers. And it's like, I don't know, it's just like the way it goes through the bar, like everybody's partying, and then it's just like some like a guy will like walk through with a guitar, and then like an African dancer will go through. Like, I don't know, man. It just I was waiting
Well,
for a
here
fucking I was waiting for a
Modelo
fucking brand to
commercials,
pop up on screen.
like a Modelo commercial though, like is co-opting a good message like to sell a product, right? Like yeah,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, like being blue collar, getting together with your buddies and sharing a beer, I think is a good cultural thing. Like the
sure.
thing that makes that insufferable is that it's all being like is it that like completely decent ideology is being usurped to sell product. But like this film isn't trying to do that. Like right, like it's
Well,
taking like those very earnest, sweet things. It's delivering on them, I think, in a very saccharine, in a very colorful way. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think.
look,
Yeah.
if it like I was just waiting for a logo for something to pop up throughout that whole sequence, and maybe once the film comes out on streaming, I'll extract that scene and throw a Modelo logo up on the end of it, and people will you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But it's just like I don't know, like it's fine. I won't be like too much of it. Like I at least like to give it its credit to what Ben was saying. It's like I think it's a bold cinematic decision, and I appreciate Ryan Coogler taking that swing. It did not land for me. It felt like advertisement, but it's definitely something that I wasn't expecting. It's definitely like a very like bold decision, and obviously, like many bold cinematic decisions, it's polarizing. It works for some people and it doesn't work for others. And I'm one of the people that it didn't work for, but c'est la vie, I guess.
I really love how it plays into the themes of the film too. Like I love the utility of it. My favorite reference back to it is at the very end when Stack says, and I won't give the context as I don't need the context of the scene, but when Stack says, um, I miss the real guitar. Like I miss like that those classic sound, but those old recordings. He's like referring to like Alan Lomax recording the shit, right? He's like those recordings are shit quality. They don't do it justice. Like I need to
Yeah.
hear it. And it's again like how like how music is transported through time, and it's like the speakers that they're recorded on, and like the mics that they're recorded on, like have an effect on those things, and
Yeah, but
like
that
we
scene
can't.
doesn't capture that though. It's like so highly produced. It's like such a huge budget, like weird, like and all the anachronism of the score and like all of the different like things that are going into it. Like that's not a fucking like dirt Alan Lomax recording. Like I
No,
don't
I'm
feel like
not
that captures
saying it
that
is.
at all.
Like what
Well,
I'm
I think
saying.
the point is like the Alan Lomax, doesn't fully capture what the feeling of being there was, and that's
Right,
why they refer to them as shitty recordings.
right.
And it's like
Because
that
music
idea
transports.
of
Yeah, that's what I mean.
being
Thank you.
there, and like I do think there's something really interesting in this film about like the power of live music,
Yes.
right? Like, and experiencing music communally.
Culture, right? Again, like getting together
Yeah.
the people you're with, and experiencing something together, and like I think that's why they're making this club to begin with, is they see the value in that, and why I think it's really awesome that this film takes so much time to show all these individuals, and then also how they act together and what they can do together, and yeah, to kind of culminate that scene, and like, hey, like we're talking about spiritual vampires and all of the rest of it, but at the end of the day, we have to see like that good, and showing it like metaphysically is cool. I think, and so like I think it's a very necessary high point. And yeah, like there's an argument to be made that high point could have been made with just those characters there enjoying the music as it was. But yeah, I like that he's trying to make that message resonate through time, because that's also what he's doing as a director, showing a period piece film to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a little didactic, like on the nose, but like with a grand gesture like this, that's fine, especially in a big movie like this. Like, I think it transcends a little bit, but yeah, going into the third act a little bit, where kind of the vampire stuff takes a front and center position. I'd love to hear more of what you guys think about like how you feel it works as like an actual like genre horror movie.
Dope. God, those vampires look so fucking cool. Like I thought it was awesome. There we go. That's my gushing.
I
Like
like that they have like the motif of them like drooling.
Yeah.
yeah, I like the vampire makeup. I like the way that they look. I think that structurally the way that they approach that is like pretty unoriginal and uninteresting. It's like, okay, the vampires can't enter the place unless they have an invitation. And then the one character gets so overwhelmed because her husband's become a vampire, she just wants to get at him. She just says, "Come on in," and they all run in, and it's kind of yeah. So they stab some of the vampires. Um,
I will say like it does feel like there could have been more of a push and pull there. I would have liked seeing a few more characters get picked off before the floodgates are open, so to say.
Yeah, I think
Um,
just at that point there's not a lot of there's no time for it. They've already waited so long to get to this point.
yeah.
And also I don't know, I think there's something a little bit unbelievable about how basically once all the vampires run in, like most of our main characters are able to pretty easily like kill a bunch of them. Like it feels like they're like stronger than the vampires in a way that feels sort of awkward and just like plot armory.
I
I
mean, in
don't like
fairness, most
we
of the
lose
characters also die.
die.
Like,
Yeah, like I think we lose a good number of like these like set up characters in that
like
scene.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like that's where Annie dies.
yeah. I mean, she that makes the most sense, but like the one woman who like lets them all in because her husband's become a vampire. It's like that's just like she's just basically sacrificing herself outright. Fucking Delroy.
She would, because her daughter, right? Like that's what she like. I think that works for her character motivation. Is like she's sort of standing against the others because everyone else there wants to just wait out the night. But like for her, that's not a choice because they've already said that they're going to go kill her daughter instead.
So
So
she
like,
kills her. So she kills herself.
yeah, to prevent them from killing her daughter, which works.
Yeah, I mean, I
You
don't
know,
know. I
like
think
she
would
brings
want
them all in so that they, because like she's weaponizing all of her friends, right? Like she's saying like, hey, if I bring in these vampires, like we all have to kill them because that's how it's going to happen one way or the other. So she just sort of takes matters into her own hands. I mean, to me, like like character wise, that clocks.
Yeah, I mean, Delroy sacrifices himself for basically no reason. Like that, I don't know. Like it's whatever. Like I don't want to get too into it. Like if it works for you guys, it just felt sort of generic and like I don't know. A lot of it didn't feel very natural to me. But
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the Delroy thing worked for me because he, in a way, let Sammy escape, and it was kind of the passing of the torch with the
Right.
old guard of musician to the new guard. That doesn't matter all that much. I mean, I do want to say Delroy Lindo is awesome in this movie.
yeah, he's great.
I loved him in Da Five Bloods,
Yes.
the Spike Lee movie from a few years back, and I was super thrilled to see him in such a major role here. I think he does a fantastic job.
Yeah, he's sort of a classic comic relief character.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite characters in the movie. I agree. He's very
Um,
fun.
we were talking about like characters getting picked off, and I did want to talk about we talked a little bit about the lightest one where they accidentally like kill the guy by throwing him outside because they think he's gonna
Yeah,
turn.
right.
But the other two, because again, like I think rule of threes, like there is enough again for me. There's enough of it. Like Mary's turning is excellent. It does happen off screen, but I think the setup is great. Like her going out with them kind of seducing her into the fold, but then her, changing her mind at the end, like really did a great job of like kind of setting up these vampires, and their kind of little family that they're trying to build. But I really love how like the Remick like leaps just a little too high into the air before the scene cuts. I thought it looked like really good.
No, that was goofy.
Yeah. Oh,
Kind of a
it
fun
was
way.
fun. Couple of people gasped behind me when it happened, so I thought that really enhanced the experience. I think I was the only white guy in the theater too, by the way. But I was really happy though. Like it was a pretty full group like in the theater too, which
Yeah, our
I
theater was
thought at
pretty full as well.
1 p.m. on a Friday. So that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice to see. So I hope that bodes well for the box office.
Yeah, we saw it at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday or a
On a
Thursday.
Thursday,
Sorry.
yeah.
4 p.m. on a Thursday, and the audience was pretty full. So yeah, I
Good,
mean, I
good.
think it's
Oh
going to
yeah.
be successful. I will say, I thought it was an interesting decision to have, because the vampires have sort of like classic iridescent eyes, like the light hits them and they glow, and most of them glow red, but some of the vampires, they make them different colors for some reason. Like when Stack becomes a vampire, like his eyes are like blue, and maybe this is me reading in too much to it, but I did think it was an interesting decision that the one Chinese guy that they make the vampire, he's the only one who has yellow eyes when he's a vampire.
I did not notice that. I did not clock that, and I have no
I
comment on
I
it.
I clocked it and I was like, oh, that's a decision. Moving on.
I
Well,
did see
yeah.
that Ryan Coogler was really inspired by the movie Puss in Boots, the recent
What?
one, because the villain's
Red
eyes glow red in that movie, and so he
eyes
like
are
directly.
scary. They're fun.
Yeah,
I think it's a great undying trope. I also want to talk about cornbread a little bit.
he's
Big
great.
fan, big fan of cornbread. His death was great. I love like the whispering like you're about to get killed in the night trope is a classic one, but I really love that like the whispering keeps stopping him like midstream as he's like pissing outside, and
Yeah,
like it got a good laugh out of me. I thought that was some really fun comic relief too. And his coming back and trying to get in through the door, I also thought that dialogue was like really gratifying and also pretty believable. Like the characters do clock on that like that the vibes are off with him, and that like yeah, I thought that was cool how they were just like, you've come and gone like all night. Like what's the problem, man? Like what's going on?
like why do you need permission to
Yeah,
enter
it's
now?
the kind of natural. Like I know the film is like very like flowery and very like high production value, but like to me like it's the kind of naturalism that made it a lot easier for me to like take the film at its own merits. Like in the dialogue, like again, just like a lot of talk about eating pussy, a lot of talk about like like just kind of cutting through like the genre tropes that made it very fun for me to watch. Like, I had a great time.
I want to briefly talk about the mid credits sequence, because I know there's
Yeah.
that little article that we need to talk about too.
Yeah, one last thing before we jump to mid credits, the finale of the movie before we get to the credits with the grand shootout between, you know,
Oh yes,
Smoke and the
I thought the movie was
KKK
over. I
is
thought it was
the
done. I
such
was
an
like, oh, they killed the
explosive
vampires.
ending to the movie.
It's like, what are they gonna do with the Klansmen? Like, oh yeah, what's that afterthought gonna be? And then he opens that box, and what I think is like a BAR is inside of it. And I was just like, fuck yes,
I like
dude.
how they kind of
Like,
set that up earlier when they're like something's happening. Is like, should I go get the crate or should I go get the suitcase or whatever? And Haley Steinfeld is like, whatever it is, I don't think you need to go get the crate. And then he goes
Yeah.
and at the end, when everybody's dead, he goes and gets the crate. I appreciate that as sort of like a cathartic sort of like footnote at the end of the movie. It's like after all of this shit, let's just watch Michael B. Jordan like shoot up a bunch of Klansmen.
he
I
earned
do
it.
think that's like there is like a little bit of like well actually like plot thing for me where it's like okay, so the clan who sold them this barn were always gonna lynch them, but why? But for some reason, instead of showing up in the middle of the night when the place is full and they could kill as many beeps as they wanted, they show up at the morning when nobody's there anymore.
Well,
I
I
thought that
think
was a little.
it's supposed to draw a direct parallel between the vampires and the clan, right?
I mean, clearly, I'm just saying from the clan's motivation, like, if they were selling this barn to the Stack twins as like an effort to lure in a bunch of black people so they could show up and kill them, it would make sense for them to do that at night when the place is full. But we can't do that because the vampires have to show up at night. So the clan have to show up first thing in the morning when everybody's gone. I'm just saying
that
it
would
doesn't
have
make a
been
lot of.
really funny if the
Yes,
vampire siege was interrupted by an
by
attempted clan siege.
by an attempted clan lynching that like the vampires are doing this whole thing and the clan show up and they're like, yeah, white brothers, let's get these beeps, and then the vampires just like all turn and just like slaughter the clan or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that would have been fun.
But I
But
think again, like it's a
again,
direct
it's
thematic
a
Right. And also, like
reason.
that hanging thread of like,
it's a
hey, if we
catharsis
become
thing.
vampires, we could just eat all of the clan. Like, is such a good motivation point for like Smoke and like such a great temptation. We're gonna be like, oh yeah, damn, we could though, couldn't we? That it works, and I don't know, maybe like the clan are notoriously like poorly organized. Like maybe they tried to, but they just showed up late. Like.
Yeah, I mean, well, they showed up real late, for sure. But I mean, yeah, as sort of like an end of the film catharsis with just getting to see Michael B. Jordan unload on these fucking racist hillbillies with all this weaponry that presumably he brought home with him from World War One. Yeah, that's fun. Like as sort of like a punctuation on the film, I get it. And I wish I do wish they just sort of ended the movie there because in classic Marvel fashion, they have to do a mid-credit sequence where we jump forward in time and we see Sammy as an old man in the 90s, played by blues legend Buddy Guy. Like, that's kind of cool, I guess.
Awesome.
They see him, playing in his club or whatever, and then he's, after everybody leaves, the bouncer comes and is like, oh, there are a couple people, they want to come in, they offered $200 to come in, or he's like, yeah, that's fine, let him in. And it's fucking Michael B. Jordan, it's Stack and Mary and Haley Steinfeld, and like, oh, they actually didn't die, they escaped, and Michael B. Jordan is wearing a Coogler sweater now.
He looks
Um,
awesome. He
he's
looks
got
so
he's got
good.
he's got a do the right thing Radio Raheem style rings on his fist, but it just says Stack.
Yeah. Because he collects stacks. Like it works on its own too. Like,
Yeah.
it's so dumb. I love it.
Yeah, and then he sits down and he plays them. So then Michael B. Jordan's like, I don't like the electric shit. I like the acoustic shit. You still got that old guitar or whatever. And Sammy plays a little bit for them, and then they He's like, yeah, before the shit with the vampires happened, that was the best day of my life. And Stack is like, yeah, me too. That was the last time I saw my brother. And then they walk out into the night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like the little bit of plot stuff with like the elaboration that like Smoke uh made Stack promise not to go after Sammy,
Yeah.
and like
And he let him
he
go.
only came now as, because he smelled death coming and was like, I have a way out, from death. I can turn you if you want. And I think it's really powerful for Sammy to be like, no, I've seen what I needed here,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen enough of this world. I want to go be with my ancestors, because that's the thing about the vampirism, right? Like it severs you from your ancestors, gives you eternal life, but because of that, you don't get to go be with the spirits.
Yeah. And I do think there's something really metatextually beautiful about that being delivered by Buddy Guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's
Did you stick
like,
around for the end credit
yes, I did.
scene? Okay,
Yes, I did.
we didn't. You'll have to explain that to us. I read after the fact what happened in it.
Okay, yeah, the post credit sequence. Yeah, Ben and I did not stick around for that because frankly, I thought, oh, mid credit sequence. Well, there's not going to be anything at the end. Stupid dumb idiot like I am, not fucking anticipating the Marvel mindset. What happened at the very end?
Well, Ben, you said you read it. I'm trying to remember because it's been like
From what I
You
understand,
saw it
and
today.
I
maybe
know,
you
but
can
it's a
back
lot of
me up
movie.
on it, but it was very simple. It was Sammy in the church playing This Little
Oh,
Light of Mine or something like that.
yeah, that's literally it. Yeah,
It's
it's
just a
very short.
quiet moment
Okay.
Just a quiet,
of him
sweet moment at the end. Yeah.
playing a track in the church,
Hmm.
which I guess ties everything together in a way, but
Hmm. And
not
like,
like
uh,
critical as much as the mid credit.
no, it's not essential, which is why I really don't mind it being kind of like tethered to the end. Is it's a moment where we get to see like Miles Caton just like quietly play a song just himself in that beautiful little church set, and it gives us just like a little bit of like peace with his character after, because we see like all of the chaos, like him showing back up at the church, um, like utterly wrecked from that night before, and we don't get like any moments of peace with that otherwise. So yeah, to me, like it kind of helps show that like he didn't just completely like reject all of the positives of religion as well, and that like he does sort of kind of embrace like some of the or sorry, reject yeah, that he does embrace some of the positives. And I liked that, and plus too, like it just gives like Miles Caton that kind of moment to just play a song like and just be sort of in the spotlight. So yeah, I did like the credit scene. I thought what felt very 90s to me, like early 2000s was the end credits music. Like it was sort of like an almost like an R&B track about how scary vampires are, and
Yeah,
it was
it's
like
bad. It's pretty bad.
it was corny as fuck, but I couldn't help but smile, if I'm being honest. Like I thought it
I
was
mean,
kind
look,
of fun.
again, I'm always pro movies getting an artist to write an original song for the credits of a movie, even if it's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we can't. Not every artist can be Dawkins. Not every end credits. Not every end credit scene can be Dream Warriors. Like I get it, but yeah, that was pretty bad. So Ben, you before we started recording, you sent us a little bit an article, a brief
Yeah.
article. Do we want to talk about that before or after we rate? I
Let's
mean,
talk
we can
about
just
that
kind of
after we rate. I think
okay.
it's a
Well
bit
then,
separate from the art.
yeah, okay. Well then, let's go ahead and rate. I'll start so we can start with the worst rating at the bottom, and we can build our way up instead of going reverse order. You know what? Like I was going into this planning to give it a 3 out of 5, but like after the conversation, it's like even if some of the stuff doesn't necessarily work for me, like y'all have sort of like brought me around on certain merits of the film that maybe we're not super apparent to me in the first place. So I'm gonna raise my rating a half star. I'm gonna give this a 3.5 out of 5. Again, like, I respect the big swings this movie takes. I think it's got some problems, but I like a lot of it. And sort of my hypercritical, eye on this comes mostly from like the little things that I think this movie could change to be great, to ascend from good to great. And to get to that point, there are nitpicks. So I've spent this episode being kind of a shithead, but yeah, 3.5 out of 5 overall for Sinners, and still I think you should go see it. That's
Yeah. Well, much like you in this discussion, I've also talked myself up on it a little bit more than I was even. I think I was at a 3.5, and I think by now I'm at a 4. I think
Goddamn.
this movie has a lot of super interesting ideas. It's beautifully shot on film.
Yeah.
I would love to see the IMAX version of this. We saw it on the Dolby version, which was
That looks
beautiful, but
even
it
bad,
was
though.
also like the
Looks
ultra
great.
widescreen version, so you didn't get all the full frame stuff. Um, Incredible acting performances, some great live musical performances in it. Um, and it's crazy that Ryan Coogler is under 40. I think he's one of the youngest big directors like this working right now. And I hope he's got a lot more big swing original IPs in him because
I hope he
yeah,
stays out of
super
Marvel
interesting.
jail.
Oh yeah. Well, for me, no perfect movie exists, but I mean, goddamn, if this movie was not perfect for me, guys. Like, I really liked this movie. I was contemplating, like, I got out of it at like 3:30 or so, and like I was contemplating, like, could I get another viewing in before the podcast? And I was like, I had to talk myself. I'm like, no, I would be late. I'd ruin it. But like, I was just like, I'm gonna try and get back to the theater next week and see it if I can again. I loved it. I loved it to bits. It's a 5. It's a 5 for Cleveland. Again, I'll be I very lightly touched on it, but I will be curious to see like how the movie ages. And like again, that sequence there, um, that main sequence that we deliberated a lot. Like I will be very curious to see again like how these things sort of like are perceived over time. But like for me right now in the moment, yeah, fucking loved it. 5 out of 5.
Well, that will give Sinners an average of 4.2 out of 5. And Cleve, I don't know if you realize, but I think this might be your longest stretch of consecutive 5-star ratings in the podcast. I think you're at 5 in a row now.
So do we start with Nosferatu?
I mean, Nosferatu was
No.
several months ago, but working backwards, Sinners, you gave a 5. Under the Skin, you gave a 5.
Banger.
Tetsuo, you gave a 5.
Banger.
Both of your British horror BBC ones, you gave a 5.
Bangers
And
that I love.
Ghostwatch, you gave a 5.
All
And before
classic
that was
12 banger.
Ghost Stories, which you didn't. So that's 5
Yeah, well,
consecutive perfect ratings from Cleveland, and I think this is your record.
it's a good idea, and I stand by
And I
it.
stand by. I cannot say
stand
that with
by.
100% certainty, but I cannot remember another stretch
It
where
seems
you've
right.
given this many consecutive 5 out of 5s. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, before we sort of wrap up, you did send us an interesting article before we started recording the podcast, Ben, about how Ryan Coogler got a very special deal when making this movie with the studio, with Warner Brothers, where he was basically able to negotiate a deal where after 25 years, he himself will regain the rights to this film.
And I think, this is incredibly important due to like the theme and material of this movie for him. In interviews he said this was kind of a one-off thing for him with this
Yeah.
one. Um and it makes sense in that respect.
He's not planning on pursuing the same deal for his future films, but at least, in the article, how they quoted him, he was saying that it was important for him to for his film about Black ownership to return to Black ownership after a certain point. But a big part, which is cool, and frankly, honestly, I'm for it. I think filmmakers should own the rights to their films, and I love this. But sort of the crux of the article was the industry response, people being like, "This is going to destroy the Hollywood system if other directors think they can do this," because basically the way that studios make their money, their primary source of income, is the licensing rights to their catalog of movies. That the studio business plan is to create as strong of a catalog as possible, so farther down the line they can continue to sell the licensing rights to the movies that they have produced, to the movies that they own.
It paints a really interesting picture of Warner Brothers as a studio in crisis, right? Like, under the shadow of Zaslav, you know,
Boo!
essentially
Boo!
wrecking the reputation of the studio. Michael DeLuca and Abdi, I can't remember her first name.
Pam Abdi?
Pam
Something like
Abdi, yeah, have come in and really taken, like, a director-first approach in a lot of respects. Like, they're giving PTA $130 million for his, One Battle After Another movie. You know, Sinners was $90 million, and I think in the article it said it has to make something like $300 million to break even, which goes against traditional studio wisdom. By all means, it's a huge bet because, like, a common thing you hear from the studios is uh black-led movies do well in the States, but they don't do very well internationally. And that's the biggest hurdle for a lot of these filmmakers and films, and I hope it's proven wrong with this one, obviously. Um, but yeah, because they're so in crisis and, desperate for hits, they're making these deals that are way more favorable to directors than we've really seen before outside of, Tarantino.
The way the article kind of framed it too is that like they're approaching it from a perspective of that like 25 years from now, like they're not still going to be executives at Warner Brothers, so who gives a shit if Warner Brothers doesn't have the rights? And it's like, honestly, yeah, like if we're accepting the narrative of Warner Brothers as a studio in crisis, which if true, I mean obviously crisis is defined very differently by executives than it is by other people. But if true, they have nobody to fucking blame for that except fucking David Zaslav. So, like, if that's, and yeah, they have nobody to blame for that shit but themselves. So, like, if DeLuca and Abdi are coming in and being like, yeah, fuck it, like, we need capital, we need cash flow now, so make a deal that's less beneficial for us in the future to get the studio back on its feet. Honestly, whatever. Like I say, good. I'm glad for Ryan Coogler.
I think it's very fitting that like it's also happening under Warner, which has recently utterly trashed its so much of its legacy and its reputation, particularly with things like Looney Tunes recently, right? Like there's been that Looney Tunes film that has just been under lock and key for like years now. The Wile E. Coyote case or whatever, and like so much else. They've like dropped so much of those pieces from their streaming, etc. Like they've regularly trashed legacy. And in addition to that, I want to go back to just the beginning of that. And like, forgive, I'm not that much of a student of history, and I'm not all too familiar with the circumstance. But as far as I understand, like, and again, historically, this was long ago, and equal parts all not that long ago. That like the Tulsa massacre occurred because like black-owned businesses like were beginning to like establish a foothold in the community, and so like they just went on a massacre and like burned all these businesses. So like the idea of this movie being around about like black-owned businesses at that time, like, and that ownership of the film and the ownership of the art going back to Ryan Coogler is extremely based and cool.
Yeah, sure.
And in addition, of course, like the executives who are like missing out on this opportunity for ownership over this movie long term are going to act like this is destroying the industry, that everything is going to fall apart because of this one time this is happening. When Tarantino has been doing this, right? Like, I'm sorry, but not every filmmaker is Tarantino, and not every filmmaker is Ryan Coogler, and not every filmmaker has the leverage that they do. And like at the end of the day, that's because the studios largely have nearly all of the leverage in these circumstances. They're the ones who fund and finance and produce these films, and almost always have final cut to begin with. So, like, no, this is not going to be the death of the industry. That's incredibly silly to me. If the industry dies, it's going to be for
find
a very
interesting
different
is
reason.
like this WB is at such an impasse right now that like they are absolutely banking on this movie being a huge success and a couple others, this year being a huge success, because if they aren't, Abdi and DeLuca are out, and suddenly we go to the worst impulses of David Zaslav, and we, turn up the Mickey Mouse dial to 11 and become pure IP slop. I think one of the interesting things about Abdi and DeLuca are, again, like they are kind of the old guard in that they're going after directors first and like original material, and like what happens if that fails? Like I think the risk is if this fails, this, kind of approach fails, they'll use this as an example not to, give those rights away ever
Well,
again.
Yeah.
to me, it's the same reason why, like, again, it can be on the opposite side of the spectrum, a self-fulfilling prophecy. I lightly touched on it last week, but to me, it's sort of one of the grander fallings with, again, like using a Disney example, the Black Widow movie, the Falcon fucking movie, like those sorts of films. Like, they put less resources into those films, right? Because it's starring a woman, it's starring a black guy, like, and they put less into it, and I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in that respect, right? And those movies tank. But then again, you have the
Black
Coogler example
Panther.
where like they put quality, they put love
Yeah.
into it, like, and the rest of it, and it did great, right? Like, because at the end of the day, like, so often you can't fake artistry, you can't fake quality. Like, you can use whatever data analysis all day, but if you're making something that speaks to people, they're gonna buy it. Like, it's abstract labor, right? Like, it's not quantifiable resources.
Whether people consciously recognize it or not, like even your sort of like general like pleb movie going audience, whatever, can clock insincerity,
Yep.
and I think that like people, again, whether subconsciously or otherwise, do respond positively to sincerity, to sincere filmmaking, to like something real. And it's like obviously Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan have clout, and they have like a certain amount of prestige attached to their names, and that's enough to get people out to theaters. But the fact that like, yeah, this is opening weekend for Sinners. Ben and I saw it at 4 on a Thursday, and the theater was fuller than it was not. And the fact that you saw it in fucking our rinky dink county in Alabama, and that on a 1 p.m. on a Friday, and that there were a lot of people there. Like, I think Sinners is going to be successful. I think this
Yeah.
gamble is going to pay off. But also, at the end of the day, I am entirely unsympathetic to C-suite whining. I
Oh,
do not give
absolutely.
I do not give a single fuck what the executives in Hollywood think that this portends for the future of the industry. And all I have to say is that Ryan Coogler being like, I'm not going to seek this for future films, this is a one off. Bullshit. Seek it for your future films,
I think
Ryan.
more
Do the
more
shit.
filmmakers should seek this, like,
More
rather
More
than
creators
filmmakers
let
should
it
should
own
just
their work.
fall
Wow,
away.
yeah, what a crazy idea.
But I will say, like, I think as movie lovers, we need Sinners to be successful, right?
Sure.
Because again, if it doesn't, I don't think it says good things about the future of R-rated broad market movies for adults in the theaters.
Yeah.
And
Well, but don't
that's
worry, Ben. Deadpool and Wolverine did great. You're gonna keep getting that in some capacity.
No, and I think that obviously next
No,
week we'll have
it's
our prediction results. Next week we'll have our prediction results and we'll see. But like, I don't know, man. Like just based off of seeing it basically day one, day two, and how many people were in the theaters, I think this is going to be successful. I think
Oh
this is
yeah.
like all of my complaints aside, like I don't think your average movie going audience is going to share most of my complaints. I think this
Yeah.
movie is a true crowd pleaser. And
Yep.
Coogler's a great crowd pleaser. Michael B. Jordan draws people. Like I think that this is going to be successful. And I think that as a gamble, this is going to pay off. And you know what? Honestly, if it encourages studios to, which this is extremely optimistic, but if it encourages studios to adapt a model of let's make our money off of making movies that people actually want to see rather than let's make our money off of being able to license our catalog 25 years down the line, then that's a fucking net positive. Even if Sinners is successful, I do not think that studios are going to switch to that model. Again, I'm being
Studios are
optimistic.
stupid. Like, and
Studios are stupid. Executives don't like. David Zaslav is extremely anti-art, extremely anti-artist. Like executives do not have the capacity to be pro-art. I think in
and it's
this
worth
day and age.
remembering.
But
It's worth always remembering that HBO was one of the only streaming services that was actually in the green before Zaslav made all of these
yeah,
choices. Like
yeah,
back when it was
yeah.
HBO and like HBO Max, like or HBO Go and like all that shit, they were one of the only services that was actually like in profit. Like
Yep.
so never forget that part too.
Yep.
That not only like was he making anti-art decisions, but inevitably they also tanked the studio and they were
The
poor
reason
quality.
the reason that Warner Brothers is in the dire straits that they're in is because of David Zaslav
Yeah,
and people
easy.
like him.
Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
and that is clear. So you know what? Like, yeah, honestly, any of these kind of decisions that make people like Zaslav and that fucking ilk makes them anxious, good, good.
Be afraid. Be worried that yeah, like your foothold on the industry will collapse.
Exactly. And I hope this gamble pays off. And I'm not gonna fucking like sit here giving a credit to DeLuca and Abdi because at the end of the day, they're C-suite goons as well. So, but like I do hope that this sets a precedent. I hope that what the studios fear this means, it becomes the reality. I hope that directors start seeing this and saying, "Yeah, you know what? If you want me to make a movie for your studio, like I'm gonna bring in buku bucks for you, but I want the rights to this shit 25 years from now." Good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, if it gives filmmakers more leverage, then fucking great, honestly. Like,
Exactly. Fuck the executives. Power to the actual fucking artists, the filmmakers, and David Zaslav can suck my fucking dick.
Yep. Ownership to artists.
Ownership to artists. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, and hopefully again, like this means future of more director-driven, new ideas.
Yeah.
I want to get out of the IP mines once
Yeah.
and for all.
And and again, like I think Sinners has its problems. I've spent the last 2 hours talking about my problems with Sinners, but kudos to Ryan Coogler. I'm happy this movie exists. I'm happy that he was able to make something ambitious like this. And even if it didn't necessarily tickle me in the way that I was hoping for, like it's only an opportunity for Coogler to learn and grow as a filmmaker. For as big as he is, he has not made that many films. He has less than 10 feature-length films under his directorial belt. And
Yeah.
like
Well,
So does
he did
Tarantino.
he did mention his next project that he wanted to do. I don't know if you guys heard about this.
Oh
He
no. What is
mentioned
it?
that he wanted to do a new version of the X-Files as his next project.
that's IP though. That's IP though.
Yeah.
Do more original shit, Ryan. I mean,
Yeah.
that's IP
Yeah,
though.
because on one hand, it's a kind of a cool idea, but on the other hand, I agree. I would much rather have something new than just something we know.
Right,
Michael G.
exactly. It's like Sinners is Near Dark meets fucking Dusk Till Dawn meets John Carpenter meets all of these things, but like at least it's not fucking IP. At least it's not a remake of something. At least it's not based on a book or something. Like it is an original script. And it's like, come on, man. Do that shit. Like do more of that shit. It's cool that Sinners was shot on 65 millimeter or whatever. I saw that he fucking got Christopher Nolan and Emma Thompson on set to help him shoot that stuff because they've shot in that format before. Like that's cool. Fruitvale Station was shot on 16 millimeter of all things, color but 16 millimeter. That's fucking cool. Like I want to see, like, yeah, obviously Fruitvale Station was, you know, sort of a biopic kind of deal, but like, yeah, I want, now that Coogler is out of the Disney Marvel minds, yeah, make some more original shit.
Counterpoint. Mulder B. Jordan.
Okay. Yeah, I don't
Pretty
hate
neat. Fun idea, right? I want to believe.
Yeah. Man, this is the first time I think on the podcast we've talked in depth about Michael B. Jordan, and I've just had such a hard time not making a Cumtown Michael Ball's penis reference. It's like that's the Cumtown bit that has like weirdly stuck in my brain for all of these
It's
years.
one of their
Is
funniest bits.
is
Yeah.
all of that, like I feel like it's an underrated bit. It's like one that people don't talk about much, but the idea that Michael, or that all actors named Michael, like what if their last name was Michael Penis? And then Michael B. Jordan is Michael Ball's penis. It's a fun it's a funny bit. Anywho, we've gone very long on this one, so let's bring it to a close. Next week we're keeping new movies, and we're going back to a beloved favorite. David Cronenberg's new film, The Shrouds, is finally coming out. It's actually getting a theatrical run. Holy shit! I'm so fucking happy that we get to actually see Shrouds on the big screen. I hope you do too, Cleve. I don't know if you were able to find.
I looked at my MC app and I don't see anything for next week.
Oh no! Well, I
Like
mean,
no show times for anything, or just not for the show?
No, just not for the Shroud. So I'm concerned.
I mean, check in a couple
I
of days,
will.
and
I'm gonna
hopefully
keep
they'll.
looking. Yeah, because I really want to see the Shrouds. I'm happy to
Yeah,
personally. I'm happy to forego a recommendation this week. I've recommended a lot of stuff this episode, and listeners' time is important. So
I'm gonna
yeah.
recommend.
Well,
I've been playing a ton of Blueprints. Great new game. It's got its hooks in me hard. It's a mix of roguelike and puzzle game of your sort of mist variety. Very, very unique and cool and original.
yeah, I played a little bit of Blueprints. I mean, I haven't even done the our normal shit, so we're jumping ahead of stuff. But yeah, next week is the Shrouds. We're gonna see it. You know the deal. Leave us a 5-star rating, a review, join the Patreon. Shout out to the honorary pod boys, Sam, Zach, Micah, Mitchell. Y'all are the goats. Follow us on Letterboxd, Pod People Podcast, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings, links to those reviews. You know, I'm gonna recommend something that is slightly, you know, related to this movie and also to my own interests. And I know Cleveland can co-sign this as well. I'm gonna recommend Zeal and Ardor,
yeah,
a metal band who
that would
the
have been an
whole
awesome after credits for the
yeah,
movie.
the shtick, their gimmick, the shtick is what if slaves in the American South adopted Satanism instead of Christianity. So I mean, their later stuff is but at least listen to the early stuff. Strange Fruit,
Stranger Fruit is an amazing album.
Stranger Fruit is a great album. So yeah, if you want to get your a mixture of black metal with slave spirituals, yeah, check out those early Zeal and Ardor records. Mileage may vary with the more recent stuff, but anywho, well, yeah, that'll do it for us this week. You know, until next time, until the Shroud.